What is up, Celtics Nation? Welcome back to the Clover Disclosure with me, your host, Adam Taylor. Before we get into today's episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, leave a comment, we can start a discussion there, and share this with your friends or on your social media channels. Now, we're going to be continuing with realistic point guard options for the Celtics. In the first episode that we did, we looked at Patty Mills and what he could bring to the table, why he would be a possibility, and how he would help and hinder both on offense and defense. Today, we're looking at another target that's kind of less realistic, but it's still viable via a trade. And that guy is no other than Mr. Ricky Rubio. Now, Rubio is already 30 years old and is entering the last year of his deal with the Timberwolves. The problem is that that deal is quite high. It's currently sitting at roughly $17.8 million for next season. Now, a lot of people, the first thing they say is, for Rubio, you want to pay $17.8 million for Rubio? You must be mental. Unfortunately, they do have a point, but there are also other factors that we're going to look into in this video that makes it more realistic and palatable as to why the Celtics should at least have a look in Rubio's direction. Obviously, I'm not saying that any of these guards are going to end up on the Celtics, but these are the most realistic options available that could help the team. Now, we all know Ricky Rubio is not a scoring guard. He's not going to light you up from three. He's not going to realistically just destroy you in the paint. And that mid-range jumper just isn't really there either. I've actually pulled his shooting frequency stats. So these here are how often he shoots from each position on the floor. As we can see, he does like the mid-range the most, especially that long mid-range from the free throw line extended back to the three-point line. And that's where most of his shot attempts do come from. You can also see that he doesn't really attempt much down on the rim. Short mid-range, you're talking floaters and things of that nature, don't really have much of a frequency there either. However, he is quite partial to a nice corner three-point shot. So now we've seen how often he shoots the ball. We know his areas are going to be the long mid-range and the corner three. Those are his money spots. Those are where he wants to get the ball. Now, that's great. You're taking shots from there. We know that now. We can see that. But what about your actual consistency? How accurate are you when taking those shots? I pulled the data for that too, everybody. Here we go. So that long mid-range shot he likes to shoot, he's only ever been in the positive aspects of a league percentile in 2 seasons, 16 to 17 and 17 to 18. We could take 14 to 15 possibly as well. The corner threes, he's about league average at this point in his career. We can't be upset with that. But when he's not really showing any scoring ability around the rim, he's not showing much from that floater area. There's not much scoring gravity that he's going to give you. So why is he going to be helpful? Short word, facilitation. Long phrase, interior facilitation. He's not going to beat you off the dribble much. He's not going to force you to close out on him. In fact, most of the time in pick and roll situations, we're going to see guards going underneath that screen on Rubio. Now, what this does do is allow him to put the ball onto the floor, penetrate, and make secondary reads out of that penetration, or start to orchestrate defensive rotations and then find the open man. And this is what Rubio has done consistently for his entire career. Similar to a Rajon Rondo, which I'm sure we all know very well. It's that type of play where you're passing and the fear of your penetration forces that defense to collapse, and then you hit somebody that's actually a good shooter. That's what we all want, right? Now, obviously, that's how we're reading it. His statistics say similar. If we look at his career stats, he's mainly an assist guy, 7.6 assists per game. Now, stats obviously only tell you a very short margin of what's happening game by game, or over a career, you can start to see a broader picture. He does get 11 points a game on his career. In Minnesota last season, he was getting about 8.6, but he was deferring to Karl Anthony Towns quite a bit. I'm not too concerned about the scoring. I'm going to be honest. The Celtics have Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. They might have Evan Fournier back. Romeo Langford should be able to shoulder some of that slashing rate. Aaron Nesmith's only going to keep improving. Peyton Pritchard's scoring distance, his range is ridiculous as well. So I don't worry about the shooting so much. However, we need to know where his assists are coming from. Is he an open floor assist guy? Is he the guy that's throwing them pitch ahead passes? Or does he need to have the ball in motion to be a good facilitator? Or is it the other way around where he needs a pick and roll to be able to create anything? Ideally, he's going to be both, right? Well, I pulled some film so we can explore that too. So the first thing I noticed is he does possess an ability to create off the perimeter. And that's important. That importance has been reduced by the addition of Al Horford, who is, again, a perimeter creator by nature, but he's going to be able to facilitate out of the elbows, out of the post. He's going to give you multifaceted facilitation. So if we watch this video of Rubio's perimeter creation, and then we can come back and discuss it afterwards.
Yeah, I do remember that there was a night they could not make anything. Oh, what a cut by Okogie, and Rubio finds him right in stride.
The first thing I take from that is the patience. There was multiple off-ball cuts happening on the weak side. Rubio takes it over towards the wing slot area, waits for that secondary cut, and then hits the man with a one-handed pass. He didn't choose to hit the first option because he recognized the defender was close enough to, one, play the passing lane, and two, there'd be a hand in that guy's face the minute he received the ball. So Rubio shows poise, he shows concentration and an understanding of how the game's developing, and then hits his guy off that, I think it was a back cut. If we watched it again, I'd be able to tell you more, but he hits him with that one-handed pass. To me, that's perfect. That's exactly what you want when you're creating on the perimeter, and that off-ball movement that's required to create opportunities like that is something the Celtics have lacked in the last 18 months or so, where we've seen more of a perimeter five out based offense where you have one guy going ISO and everybody else looking to score. So having that forced upon you that you need to cut because that's where the creation is coming from, I'm all for that. I think that can add a bunch to the way the Celtics run their offense and the fluidity of that offense. The next thing I noticed was, and this was something I was looking for, it isn't something that kind of caught my eye, I actually went hunting for. How good is his dribble drive creation? How good is he at putting the ball on the floor, penetrating the defense, and then creating out of that defense? There was a nice little caveat to this play that I'm going to speak about afterwards, but if we watch that first.
Bat out, Rubio's got it. Ricky Rubio. And Vanderbilt's going to lay it in. Jared.
So the caveat to this play is when Rubio gets into the paint, he sees the trail man coming. He uses his body to seal his defender, similar to what Celtics fans saw Daniel Tice do so successfully. But Rubio does it and then gives off that little dump off, that little dish to the trailing cutter, who manages to get the easy layup simply because Rubio managed to seal that defender early. Now, what I like about this is there was no hesitation from Rubio. He didn't wait for guys to get into their spots. He wasn't waiting for somebody to post up on the corner and then cut baseline. Rubio saw that the defense was backpedaling, realized there was a bunch of space, the driving lanes were open, and just went full on attack mode. And when you're talking about dribble drive penetration, that's what you need. You don't want guys who are tentative, who are waiting for other people to set themselves up. Rubio goes straight at it and knows that other players will cut and drive to give him passing opportunities as he gets closer to the rim. And it also forces a bunch of defensive pressure. So the defense has to start to pinch in. There's a collapse. Maybe somebody misses a rotation and now there's a kick out. The importance of that dribble drive and the aggression shown in that dribble drive, to me, was very encouraging. Another aspect of his playmaking ability is his high-low entry passes. Now, we've seen a bunch of this last season from the Boston Celtics when they were running double big lineups, and we'd see big-to-big entry passes. What you'd have Daniel Tice on the perimeter throwing a high-low entry pass into Tristan Thompson. Once the Celtics went more traditional with one big or a small ball five, those post-entry passes did start to decline, and that's fine because post-ups in general in the NBA have declined. That's just the way the league's evolving. But Jason Tatum likes to duck into that low post. He likes to do some work from there. Having a guard that's going to be looking for that and willing to feed those high-low passes to your primary scorer that likes to get a bit of work done from that low block area, adding Al Horford into this mix as well. Maybe that's where you want to utilize Grant Williams too for some secondary creation. That's going to be important. And Rubio showed at least a willingness to hit those high-low entry passes at a fairly decent clip, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Finished second in one of those ones where he had to get 6 right. He got 5 right, and he won $97,000.
Notice how when Rubio makes that high-low entry pass, he relocates to the corners. That's one of his most accurate positions to shoot from. It's also one of his hot spots where he likes to shoot from. So he gets the ball out of his hands and relocates to where he can be at least a respectable shooter and force a little bit of spacing. He knows who he is. He understands that he isn't going to draw defenders when he's based at the top of the perimeter. So what does he do? He gets rid of the ball and relocates to where he's an effective scorer. He's also effective as a cutter as well. So having him in that corner makes a ton of sense from an offensive scheme standpoint. And the speed that he relocates, the willingness he shows to get the ball out of his hands and just occupy an area where he's going to hold value as an off-ball threat, that's invaluable. That is a veteran type of play. And Rubio relocates like the best of them. He's very sharp, very quick to get the ball out of his hands and keep moving. And that's going to force defensive rotations as well. Now, a name that we're going to look at later in this series is Lonzo Ball. And Lonzo Ball is one of the best outlet passers in the league who's a guard, in my opinion. And when I was looking at Rubio's playmaking, one of the questions I asked myself is, well, for 17.8 million, we've seen he can dribble drive. We've seen he can create from the perimeter. We know he's willing to get rid of the ball in high-low situations. But can he facilitate fast break? Can he make sure that the ball passes over that halfway line before the defense gets time to get back and get set? The answer is yes. He's a very willing outlet passer. He can throw those pitch ahead passes off steals, off rebounds. It doesn't matter to him. He just wants to get the ball up the floor as fast as possible.
Players in double figure scoring. Towns, Ant, and Rubio, and Russell.
Great job. Great.
Now, the example's not the longest pass in the world. It's not a bullet pass. It's not anything that stands out as spectacular, but it just shows a willingness to get that ball up the floor in a fast break opportunity in transition and put your team in a position to score an easy bucket while keeping the defense on their heels. It's not a super skill. It's not something that's going to make him worth the money, but it's definitely something he needs in his back pocket, and the willingness to do so is super important. So open floor, we know he can create now. He can create in every way the Celtics need. But what about pick and roll? Generally, if you're an open floor creative player, pick and roll tends to be, it's not your niche, it's not your forte. Well, I personally think that Rubio has actually blended this to become a multifaceted passer because his pick and roll creation looks solid to me, looks on point. So if we take a look at just what I've labeled pick and roll creation, creating a scoring opportunity out of a pick and roll.
He's been nominated. 54-42. McGee, a big impact off the bench as
you had him peel off a pick and roll. You had him enter and penetrate into the mid-range area, wait for the relocation on the weak side, and then a one-handed swing pass for the open three-point shot. That's fine. That's what you want. You want somebody penetrating, probing, waiting for relocations, waiting for back cuts, waiting for secondary pin downs to happen so you can find the guy with space. And it's just about the speed that Rubio plays. He doesn't let defenders rush him. He doesn't change the pace of his game. He plays at his pace, at his speed, and he seems to find the open man more often than not. So what about if we're asking him to score from the pick and roll? We've already seen that he's not really that great a scorer around the rim. I mean, realistically, we're talking 56%. So just over 1 in 2 attempts, which does sound okay. But in the grand scheme of the NBA, that percentage is just far too low to be a regular rim threat. Now, watching this video, we do see how he attacks open lanes and gets to the rim. And it is quite encouraging that if the Celtics can run some cross screens or some wedge screens to create like a wedge screen to get Grant Williams onto the block, and then Grant Williams seals the defender there, you're going to see a lot of these open lanes for people like Rubio if Rubio was to be on the Celtics.
Rubio and Ricky creating some offense.
Let's be fair, that scoring opportunity there came simply because of Karl Anthony Towns' screening ability and the scoring gravity he has as a pop threat, as a guy that's going to pop off that pick and roll and then hit the free. That means the defense is much more likely to stay up to touch on Karl Anthony Towns than they are to start dropping back to worry about Ricky Rubio, because maybe the help defender coming over from the weak side corner can do enough to throw Rubio off his game and not get that layup finish. Now, as I say, ideally, you're going to want to be creating these driving lanes by movement, by seals, by creative screening, cross screens, up screens, whatever you need. But if you can get Rubio open lanes, he does have that change of pace, and he does have enough burst off of the dribble to be able to get there quite quickly and finish with those easy layups. It's not going to be super consistent. It's not his game. What is his game is what we've seen so far: creation from the perimeter, creation from the interior, just overall offensive metronome basketball. Now, we've seen everything from his passing side of things. One of the biggest things that gets thrown to me is, hey, Rubio's not really that big. He doesn't add the size that everybody says Boston needs at the point guard position. And while that's true, one of Rubio's greatest assets on defense is the way he reads the passing lanes. His pass anticipation is elite. He jumps passing lanes consistently. It doesn't matter whether he's jumping in front of a guy and then killing the passing lane there, or he'll read a dribble handoff and just shoot the gap and get that ball off guys. Pass anticipation is actually one of his biggest assets on the defensive end, and it gives teams something to think about when running their offense. They're not worried about they know they can probably beat him off the dribble, but when they're swinging the ball side to side, they're always wary of Rubio. And here's an example of that pass anticipation in play.
You know, if they got Kevin Durant at the 4, they want to play Blake Griffin at the 5. They're going to play Nicholas Claxton. He's been too good.
Marcus Aldridge.
What's funny is Rubio makes it look like it's the other team making a bad decision. And I've watched probably 100 of these now, roughly. I went through a lot of film on this, and one of the things I noticed was every time Rubio picks off a pass, he makes it look like it's a bad pass from the offense. Sometimes that's the case. That's always going to be the case. If you get a pass picked off, 9 times out of 10, it was your mistake. But Rubio does this so effortlessly. Sorry, guys, I can't speak today. And so quickly that it always looks like a bad pass, when realistically, it's actually how good Rubio is at anticipating those passing lanes and jumping them. And that's pretty much where Rubio's biggest strength on defense is going to come from. Obviously, he's going to be a willing defender. He's going to rotate like a veteran. He'll understand multiple defensive schemes and slot into them as seamlessly as you need him to. But there are some downsides to this. We know the downsides on offense is his lack of scoring, his lack of gravity. On defense, it's how easily he's beat off the dribble. That for me is very big. He can navigate screens quite well, not excellently. He still gets caught up on them sometimes, but especially like pick and roll dribble. Someone comes off a pick and roll, turns the Jets on, a couple of dribbles, boom, they've got Rubio on their hip. And I find that maybe that's his age, maybe that's his lack of lateral quickness, but it is a concern on how easily guys can shake Rubio off the dribble.
Covered at midcourt. Shot clock now down to 5. That's a long 3. It's no good, and rebounded.
See that one little, it was just like a little side dribble, bang, and then Rubio bit on that, and then by the time he recovered, he'd ran into a screen. So it's those little things. Rubio seems to be too hyperactive, trying to get to the passing lane, that sometimes he'll bite on real simple, like fake crossovers, jab steps, and it'll just throw him out of position, and now you're in a cat and mouse game trying to catch up. 9 times out of 10, the guy with the ball is usually going to win that battle, because we're talking about NBA players. We're not at the rec league. We're not down at your local LA Fitness. So usually if you can create that advantage on a defender, unless they're an all NBA level defender, you're generally going to get the best opportunities to score. Obviously help defense plays a part in that, but we're talking one-on-one matchups. What Rubio does have though, which I like, is when he is beaten off the dribble, he's still a threat, because his ability to steal the ball, his ability to time those passes, that comes back into play here. You beat him off the dribble, you have to worry about him in what's called rear view pursuit, which is just when the player's chasing you, trying to get back up to you, trying to get back in front of you. And Rubio's actually got a good track record of being able to time your dribble and just poke that ball loose.
In this fourth quarter, way to go, D'Angelo. Mike Conley is one of their best players in clutch time.
So there we have it. So we know that Rubio is going to be a great facilitator. His scoring isn't really going to be there. It's not his game. It's not what the Celtics need anyway, if you subscribe to that pass first point guard mentality. And somebody said to me the other day, which I liked, we've got to the point now where pass first just means can't shoot. And you need to be willing to accept that. Now, $17.8 million for a year is ridiculously expensive for what Rubio brings. I personally don't think it's a very likely option, but it's viable. Rubio would be available if the trade was right, and it still gives the Celtics flexibility moving into next offseason, where there's going to be some big fish to try and pursue in free agency. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a comment, hit the subscribe button, share this with your friends. I will be back again in a day or so, and we'll be looking at TJ McConnell next as another realistic point guard option. I'm your host, Adam Taylor. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll catch you everybody soon.